My name is Audrey, and I am 32 years old. After working 80-hour weeks for years to build my marketing career in New York, I finally had everything I wanted: a dream job, an amazing fiancé named James, and $20,000 saved to fly my family to our Hawaii wedding. Despite our complicated history, I desperately wanted my parents there. Then came the text that shattered everything. "You are not worth seeing in a wedding dress." Before I continue this heartbreaking story, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button to join me on this journey of betrayal and unexpected blessings. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Omaha, Nebraska, I always felt like I was living in the shadow of my older sister Catherine. From the earliest memories of my childhood, the pattern was clear: my parents had a favorite, and it definitely was not me. Catherine was the golden child, perfect grades, homecoming queen, and could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Meanwhile, I was the disappointment, despite maintaining a solid B average and participating in debate club. My mother, Margaret, would constantly compare us. "Catherine got straight A's again, Audrey. Why can't you be more like your sister?" My father, Thomas, wasn't much better, often forgetting to attend my school events, but never missing any of Catherine's soccer games. The disparity in their affection wasn't subtle, and it shaped my sense of self-worth in profound ways. The criticism was relentless. My mother would scrutinize my appearance, suggesting that if I just lost a few pounds or styled my hair differently, maybe I'd define success like Catherine. My father would dismiss my academic achievements as luck rather than hard work. When I won second place in a state debate competition, he simply asked why I couldn't have won first. By my senior year of high school, I had developed a clear plan: get as far away from Nebraska as possible. I applied to colleges exclusively on the East Coast, and when I received acceptance to NYU with a partial scholarship, my parents' response was lukewarm at best. My father questioned whether it was worth the expense when the state university was perfectly adequate. My mother worried that I wouldn't be able to handle the pressure of a big city. Catherine, who had attended the University of Nebraska and married her high school sweetheart Mike right after graduation, suggested that I was just trying to be different for the sake of being different. Despite their discouragement, I moved to New York at 22, determined to build a life on my own terms. The first few years were admittedly tough. I worked 2 jobs to cover my expenses while finishing my degree. My tiny apartment in Brooklyn was barely large enough for a bed and desk, but it was mine, and it was free from the constant comparison and criticism I had grown up with. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at Thompson Marketing Group. While my starting salary was modest, I threw myself into the work. I stayed late, volunteered for challenging projects, and slowly began to build a reputation as someone who could handle pressure and deliver results. By 27, I had been promoted twice and could finally afford a decent apartment. By 30, I was leading my own team and had doubled my salary. During those years, contact with my family remained minimal. I would call on holidays and birthdays, enduring the awkward conversations where my mother would provide detailed updates about Catherine's picture-perfect life, her beautiful colonial-style home, her 2 children Emma and Jackson, and her husband Mike's promotion to regional manager at his company. My own accomplishments were glossed over or met with questions about when I would settle down and start a real family. Then, 3 years ago, everything changed when I met James. It was at a charity gala that my company was sponsoring. I was there representing Thompson Marketing, and James was a guest of one of our clients. Tall with warm brown eyes and an easy smile, he approached me at the bar and asked what I recommended. We spent the entire evening talking, and by the end of the night, I felt like I'd known him for years. Unlike anyone I'd dated before, James actually listened when I spoke. He was genuinely interested in my work, my thoughts, my dreams. He never made me feel like I needed to be anyone other than myself. And importantly, he understood family complexity. His own parents were divorced, and he had navigated the challenging dynamics of split holidays and competing loyalties. Our relationship progressed naturally. After 6 months, we moved in together. At 2 years, during a picnic in Central Park on a perfect autumn day, He got down on one knee with a vintage emerald ring that had remembered I once mentioned loving. Through happy tears, I said yes immediately. When we began discussing wedding plans, James suggested a destination wedding in Hawaii. Both of us loved the idea of combining our ceremony with a vacation for our closest friends and family. We chose a beautiful resort on Maui with an oceanfront ceremony space and set the date for May the following year. The question of my family loomed large. Despite the years of emotional distance, there was still a part of me that desperately wanted the wedding day fantasy complete with my father walking me down the aisle and my mother helping me get ready. I wanted to believe that such a significant life event might somehow bridge the gap between us. When I called to tell them about the engagement, my mother's first question was about the ring size, and my father's was about James' job. Catherine immediately noted that a destination wedding seemed extravagant and inconsiderate to guests who couldn't afford the trip. Still, I persisted. I sent them photos of the venue, details about the island, and information about the planned activities. My mother expressed hesitation about the expense of traveling to Hawaii, mentioning that they were trying to save for retirement. My father grumbled about long flights being hard on his back. Catherine pointed out that traveling with 2 children would be challenging and expensive. That's when I made the decision that would ultimately lead to heartbreak. I told my parents that I would cover their travel expenses, all of them. The flights, the hotel for a week, even spending money. I extended the same offer to Catherine, Mike, and their kids. I wanted no excuses. If money was the only obstacle, I would remove it. The conversation shifted immediately. Suddenly my mother was discussing what she might wear. My father was looking up fishing excursions, and Catherine was excitedly planning beach outfits for the kids. I felt a surge of hope that maybe, finally, I would have the family moment I had always craved. Over the next several months, I put aside every extra dollar I earned. I took on additional consulting projects on weekends. I canceled my gym membership and started running in the park instead. James and I scaled back our date nights to inexpensive home-cooked meals. Every sacrifice felt worth it when I imagined my family all together, celebrating our love. By the time I had saved $20,000, a sum that represented countless extra hours and considerable sacrifice, I felt proud of what I had accomplished. This would be enough to fly my parents, Catherine, Mike, and their 2 children to Hawaii, put them up in the resort for a week, and provide spending money for activities and meals. I transferred the money to my parents with detailed notes about the expected costs and timeline for booking. My mother assured me they would handle all the arrangements. I trusted them with this responsibility, partly because I was overwhelmed with other wedding planning details, but mostly because I wanted to give them a role in the process, to make them feel included and important. With the money sent and their verbal commitment secured, I turned my attention to the hundreds of other details requiring my focus. For the first time in my life, I allowed myself to believe that my wedding would heal old wounds and create the family connection I had always yearned for. 2 months before the wedding, with most of the major details finalized, I called my parents to confirm their flight information and arrival time. I wanted to coordinate airport pickups and welcome baskets for their rooms. The conversation immediately felt off. "Mom, what time does your flight get in on the 16th? I asked, calendar open and pen ready. "Oh, we're still figuring out all those details, Audrey." My mother replied vaguely. "There's been so much to organize, you know." "But I sent the money for flights almost 4 months ago," I said, confusion creeping into my voice. "Flights to Hawaii get expensive if you wait too long to book." "Don't worry about it," she said dismissively. "Your father is handling everything. We'll let you know when it's all settled." Something in her tone triggered the familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach, the one that had developed over years of disappointment. Still, I pushed the feeling aside. They had the money. They had promised to come. I needed to trust that they would follow through. As the wedding date approached, my attempts to nail down specific details were met with increasingly short and evasive responses. My texts about flight information went unanswered for days, only to receive replies like, "Still working on it," or "Well, send you the information soon." James noticed my growing anxiety. "They're coming, right?" he asked one night as I stared at my phone. waiting for a response to my third unanswered message of the day. They said they are, I replied, but there's something weird going on. They won't give me any specific information. My breaking point came 3 weeks before the wedding. I was scrolling through Facebook when I saw something that made my blood run cold. Catherine had posted photos of the Eiffel Tower. The caption read, "Day 3 of our European adventure. Paris is even more magical than we imagined." I stared at the screen in disbelief. There were more photos: my parents posing in front of Notre Dame, my niece and nephew eating ice cream at a sidewalk cafe, the whole family together on a river cruise along the Seine. The date stamp confirmed these were recent pictures, not throwbacks from a previous trip. My hands trembling, I called my sister's husband Mike. He had always been more straightforward than Catherine, and I hoped he might provide some clarity. When he answered, I tried to keep my voice steady. "Hey Mike, I saw the photos from Paris. I didn't know you guys were planning a trip to Europe." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Yeah, it's been amazing," he finally said, his voice tinged with discomfort. "We're heading to Italy tomorrow. For countries in 2 weeks." My parents are with you?" I managed to ask. Another pause. "Yeah, they organized the whole thing. Catherine said they wanted to take us all on a family trip." Another hesitation. "I thought you knew." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. I thanked Mike quickly and ended the call before he could hear the sob building in my throat. With shaking hands, I called my mother. She didn't answer. I called my father. Straight to voicemail. I sent a text to both of them. "I just saw the photos from Paris. You're in Europe with Catherine and her family? What about the wedding? What about the money I sent for you to come to Hawaii?" 20 agonizing minutes later, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Audrey, don't be dramatic," she said immediately, her voice cold. "We decided that the money would be better spent on a trip that everyone could enjoy. Catherine hasn't had a proper vacation in years, and the children have been studying European history." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "That money was for you to come to my wedding," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I saved for months. I worked weekends." "Well, we're your family all year round, not just on your wedding day," she replied. "And frankly, Catherine's family is a family. You and James are just two people who decided to get married. The kids are only young once, and they deserve to see Europe." I was speechless, my throat constricting with each heartless word. "So you're not coming to the wedding?" I finally managed to ask. "The wedding that's in 3 weeks?" "No, Audrey, we're not," my father's voice suddenly interjected. He must have been listening on speakerphone. "It was an impractical plan from the start. Hawaii is too far, and we have better uses for our time." "I can't believe this," I whispered. "I sent you $20,000 specifically for flights and accommodations to my wedding." "And we're very appreciative," my mother said, her tone suggesting anything but gratitude. "This trip has been wonderful for all of us. Catherine says it's the best gift you've ever given the family." I ended the call without another word, too stunned to even cry. 10 minutes later, my phone pinged with a text message from my father. "Your sister has given us 2 beautiful grandchildren and a stable family life. You chose to move across the country and prioritize your career over family. You're not worth seeing in a wedding dress. Enjoy your day with your New York friends." The text broke something inside me. I slid down the bathroom wall onto the cold tile floor, finally giving in to the tears that had been building. That's where James found me an hour later, still clutching my phone, my makeup streaked down my face. He sat beside me on the floor, reading the messages over my shoulder, his face darkening with each word. Then he pulled me into his arms and held me while I cried out years of rejection and disappointment, now crystallized in one unforgivable betrayal. $20,000 gone. The dream of having my family at my wedding shattered. And worst of all, the undeniable confirmation of what I'd always suspected but tried to deny: they simply didn't value me or my happiness. The following weeks were a blur of anxiety, heartbreak, and financial panic. $20,000 represented a significant portion of our wedding and honeymoon budget. Without that money, we faced difficult choices about what aspects of our planned celebration would need to be scaled back or eliminated entirely. Our first call was to our wedding planner, Diane, who listened with stunned silence as I explained the situation. I've been in this business for 15 years, and I've heard some family horror stories, but this, she trailed off, shaking her head. I'm so sorry, Audrey. No one deserves that kind of treatment, especially from their parents. We spent hours going through the budget line by line, identifying potential cuts. The live band would have to be replaced with a DJ. The elaborate floral arrangements would be simplified. The top-shelf open bar would become a limited selection. Each cut felt like another small heartbreak, another ripple effect of my parents' betrayal. Meanwhile, the Europe photos continued to flood my social media. Catherine tagged me in pictures from Italy, Switzerland, and finally Germany, with captions like "Family makes the best travel companions" and "making memories that will last a lifetime." Each notification felt like a deliberate twist of the knife. My mother sent texts comparing the beauty of the Mediterranean to the boring old Pacific, and musing about how European culture was so much more enriching than just sitting on a beach in Hawaii. I finally muted all their accounts, unable to bear another passive-aggressive reminder of what they had chosen over my wedding. The stress began to affect my relationship with James. Late one night, after spending hours reworking the seating chart to account for my family's absence, I snapped at him over something trivial. He had forgotten to take out the trash. "Maybe we should just cancel the whole thing," I said, throwing my pen down on the table. "Elope or something. This is supposed to be the happiest time of our lives, and instead it's just miserable." James looked at me with concern. "Is that what you really want? To cancel our wedding because your parents are terrible people?" "I don't know what I want anymore," I admitted, tears welling up again. "I just know that every time I imagine walking down that aisle alone, with empty chairs where my family should be, I feel sick." "You won't be alone," James said firmly. "My parents will be there. Our friends will be there. The people who actually care about us and our happiness." "But it's not the same," I whispered. It's not. It's not what a wedding is supposed to be." We went to bed angry that night, the first time that had happened in our relationship. The next morning, I woke to find James had already left for work, a note on his pillow: "I love you. We're going to get through this. Call Rachel." Rachel, my best friend since college, answered on the first ring. "I'm coming over," she said when I explained the latest developments. "Don't move." An hour later, she was at my door with coffee, pastries, and a determined expression. After listening to me vent for 20 minutes, she held up her hand. "Okay, I've heard enough," she said firmly. "I'm going to say something that might be hard to hear, but I need you to listen." I nodded, bracing myself. "Your parents are toxic, Audrey. They've been toxic your entire life. They have consistently chosen your sister over you, belittled your accomplishments, and now they've stolen from you." Stolen. She emphasized the word. "What they did is literally criminal. You could press charges if you wanted to." I hadn't thought of it in those terms before, and the realization was jolting. "But here's the thing," Rachel continued. "By allowing their actions to potentially derail your wedding, you're giving them exactly what they want. You're letting them control your happiness from thousands of miles away." Again. Her words stung. But I recognized the truth in them. "So, what am I supposed to do?" I asked, wiping away tears. "Pretend everything's fine? Act like it doesn't hurt that my own parents would rather tour Europe than see me get married?" "No," Rachel said, taking my hands in hers. "You acknowledge the pain. You let yourself feel it. And then you decide that your happiness matters more than their cruelty. You go to Hawaii, you marry the love of your life. And you start building the family you deserve, not the one you were born into." Something shifted inside me at her words. A spark of determination ignited where only despair had existed before. That afternoon, I called Diane again. Instead of cancellations, we discussed alternatives. Instead of focusing on what we were losing, we focused on what we could create. A smaller, more intimate celebration with the people who truly supported us. James and I had difficult conversations about boundaries and expectations. We agreed that my parents and sister would not be welcome at the wedding, even if they suddenly changed their minds. We discussed going no contact after the honeymoon, giving ourselves space to heal without their toxic influence. 2 weeks before the wedding, I tried one last time to reach out. I sent an email that had taken hours to compose, expressing my hurt without accusation, offering understanding without accepting mistreatment. I told them I loved them but couldn't continue a relationship that caused me so much pain. I left the door open for reconciliation, but only with acknowledgement and change. The response came 3 days later, a joint email from my parents. They expressed no remorse, only justification. They accused me of being selfish for expecting them to travel so far for a single day. They suggested that if my relationship with James was strong enough, I wouldn't need a fancy wedding to validate it. They reminded me that Catherine had gotten married in the local church with a reception in the community hall, and it had been perfectly adequate. The final line read, "When you're ready to be part of this family on our terms, we'll welcome you back." I read the email once, then deleted it. That night, I blocked their numbers. The final week before departing for Hawaii was a whirlwind of last-minute details and adjusted expectations. I tried on my wedding dress alone, missing the mother I wished I had rather than the one I actually did. I practiced walking down the aisle in our apartment, wondering how it would feel to make that journey without my father's arm to lean on. But each time despair threatened to overwhelm me, I reminded myself of Rachel's words. I was building the family I deserved. And it began with James. We arrived in Maui 5 days before the wedding, exhausted from the long flight but determined to salvage our special day. The resort was everything we had hoped for: pristine beaches, swaying palm trees, and staff who greeted us with warmth and traditional Hawaiian leis. Under different circumstances, it would have been the perfect start to our celebration. James' parents, Richard and Karen, arrived the next day, immediately enveloping me in the kind of maternal hug I'd always craved from my own mother. "We're so sorry about your family, sweetheart," Karen whispered, holding me tight. "But we're thrilled to officially welcome you into ours." To my surprise, they hadn't come alone. James' brother Michael, his sister Elizabeth, and their spouses had all made the trip as well, rearranging work schedules and finding childcare on short notice to ensure James and I would have family surrounding us. The wedding party was completed by my friends Rachel, Melissa, and Taylor, and James' friends Chris, David, and Aaron. Our intimate group of 14 might have been smaller than originally planned, but the love and support were palpable. The rehearsal dinner, held at a beachside restaurant with tiki torches illuminating the sand, became unexpectedly emotional when Richard stood to make a toast. "Family," he began, his voice steady but full of feeling, "isn't defined by blood. It's defined by love, by showing up, by choosing each other every day." He raised his glass toward me. "Audrey, from the moment James brought you home, we've considered you our daughter. Tomorrow just makes it official." I fought back tears as everyone raised their glasses. In that moment, surrounded by people who had chosen to be there, the empty spaces left by my biological family didn't feel quite so vast. Later that night, back in our suite, my phone pinged with a text from my mother. The first since I'd blocked their numbers. Somehow she'd gotten through on a different phone. "We've been thinking," she wrote. "Perhaps we could FaceTime during the ceremony. That way we could still be part of your day without the inconvenience of travel. Would need you to send us some money for an international data plan though. Europe charges quite a lot for that." I showed the message to James, who took the phone from my hands and turned it off without responding. "That's not happening," he said firmly. "Tomorrow is about us and the people who love us enough to be here. No more emotional vampires allowed." I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and relief. The final thread of hope that my parents might somehow magically transform into the supportive family I'd always wanted had been severed. It was time to embrace the reality of what was, rather than clinging to the fantasy of what could never be. The morning of our wedding dawned with perfect Hawaiian weather: blue skies, gentle breezes, and temperatures in the mid-70s. I woke early, watching the sunrise from our balcony, trying to center myself for the day ahead. Rachel and the other bridesmaids arrived at 9, bringing breakfast, champagne, and the determined cheerfulness of friends on a mission to ensure nothing spoiled my day. The makeup artist and hairstylist followed, transforming our suite into an impromptu beauty salon. I was halfway through having my hair styled when a knock came at the door. Rachel answered, spoke briefly with someone in the hallway, then turned to me with an odd expression. "There's someone here to see you," she said. Actually, a few someones. Confused, I walked to the door in my robe, my hair half up in pins, to find a woman I didn't recognize standing in the hallway. She was elegantly dressed, probably in her 50s, with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Audrey?" "I'm Rebecca Johnson," she said, extending her hand. "James' father reached out to me last week. I'm a friend of his from the industry." I shook her hand automatically, still confused. Only then did I notice the garment bags draped over the arm of the young assistant standing beside her, and the small team of people waiting further down the hallway. "I don't understand," I said, looking from Rebecca to Rachel and back again. Rebecca smiled. "I'm a fashion designer. I heard about your situation from Richard, and well, I have a soft spot for brides. I brought a few options for accessories, some last-minute styling help," and she hesitated. And I thought I saw tears in her eyes. "I thought maybe you could use someone to help you get ready. Someone who understands what it's like to have family that doesn't show up." It took a moment for her words to register. Rebecca Johnson. The Rebecca Johnson, whose designs regularly appeared on red carpets and in the pages of Vogue. And she was here, offering to help me prepare for my wedding. "But that's not all," Rachel said, grinning now. "Come in, everyone. Let's not do this in the hallway." What followed was like a scene from a movie. Rebecca and her team swept into the suite, bringing an energy that immediately lifted the room. But they weren't the only surprise. Richard had apparently been making calls all week, reaching out to business connections and calling in favors. By noon, our intimate wedding had unexpectedly gained several notable guests. A famous chef who'd once appeared on a cooking show with Richard, a well-known musician who'd performed at events for James' company, and even a minor film star who'd worked with Richard's brother on a recent project. None of them were close friends, more like friendly acquaintances, but each had been touched by Richard's explanation of our situation and had decided to show up as a gesture of support. What had begun as a heartbreaking family betrayal had somehow transformed into an extraordinary gathering of unexpected kindness. As Rebecca helped me into my dress, making small adjustments and adding a borrowed hairpin that she'd worn at her own wedding, she shared her story. Her parents had refused to attend her wedding because they disapproved of her career choice. They had wanted her to be a teacher like her mother, viewing fashion as frivolous and vain. "I built my own family," she told me as she adjusted my veil. "Found people who celebrated my passion instead of diminishing it. And look where it's led me." She stepped back to survey her work. "Sometimes the family that raises you isn't the family that raises you up." By the time I was ready to walk down the aisle, the knot of anxiety that had lived in my chest for weeks had dissolved into something else. Not quite happiness, not yet, but a profound sense of being valued, of being worth showing up for. The ceremony space looked magical, flowers adorning every surface, the Pacific Ocean providing a stunning natural backdrop. James waited at the end of the aisle, his eyes finding mine the moment I appeared. With no father to escort me, I'd been worried about this moment. But Richard had offered, and though I was touched by the gesture, something had held me back from accepting. This was my journey to make. Alone, but surrounded. As the music began and I took my first step, I realized I wasn't alone at all. On either side of the aisle, the people who'd chosen to be there stood, creating a path of love and support. No empty chairs where my family should have been. Just friends and new connections filling every space with their presence. I walked slowly, making eye contact with each person as I passed. Rachel, tears streaming down her face. James' parents, beaming with pride. Rebecca and her team, nodding encouragement. Even the celebrity guests, respectfully witnessing this intimate moment in the lives of relative strangers. When I reached James, he took my hands in his eyes never leaving mine. "You look beautiful," he whispered. "And you're not alone. You'll never be alone again." The ceremony passed in a blur of emotion. We exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promising to be each other's shelter and strength. The officiant spoke about chosen family and the courage it takes to break cycles of hurt. When James slipped the ring onto my finger, I felt like I was truly shedding my old identity and stepping into a new one, not just as a wife, but as a person who demanded the respect and love I deserved. At the reception, surrounded by the small but mighty group of supporters, I allowed myself to fully embrace the joy of the day. We danced, we laughed, we ate incredible food, and we connected with every person who had made the effort to be there. Rebecca and I had a long conversation about resilience and reinvention. She gave me her personal card and invited me to call her when we returned to New York. What could have been a cursory celebrity appearance had become a genuine connection, born from shared experience and unexpected understanding. As the night drew to a close, with tiki torches illuminating the beach and stars twinkling overhead, I realized something profound. The wedding I had actually gotten was better than the one I had originally planned. More authentic. More meaningful. Free from the tension and anxiety that my parents' presence would have inevitably brought. I was married to the love of my life, surrounded by people who had shown up not out of obligation but out of genuine care. And somehow, the $20,000 that had been stolen from me seemed like a fair price to pay for this clarity. We spent a blissful week in Hawaii for our honeymoon, deliberately disconnecting from social media and the outside world. No phones at dinner, no checking emails on the beach. Just James and me, building memories and strengthening the foundation of our marriage. On our final morning, while James was in the shower, curiosity got the better of me. I opened Instagram to find dozens of notifications. Catherine had been busy during our wedding week, posting daily updates from their extended European vacation. The final leg of their trip had taken them to Greece, where she had posted multiple photos of our parents with her children on a yacht in Santorini. The caption read, "Final days of our European adventure. Nothing better than 3 generations of family making memories together. Family is everything." I felt a familiar twinge of pain, but it didn't cut as deeply as before. Instead, I found myself thinking about Rebecca's parting words to me at the reception. "The best revenge isn't anger," she had said. "It's joy. Authentic. Undeniable joy." I was still contemplating this when my phone rang. It was Rebecca herself. "Audrey, darling, I was just thinking about you," she said warmly. "How was the rest of your time in paradise?" We chatted about the honeymoon, and then Rebecca got to the point of her call. "I wanted to ask a favor," she said. "My team took some beautiful photos at your wedding. Professional quality stuff. Would you mind if I shared a few on my social accounts? I'm launching a bridal accessory line next month, and while this wasn't planned as a marketing opportunity, the serendipity is too perfect to ignore. You looked absolutely stunning in that hairpin." I agreed immediately, grateful for the chance to repay her kindness in some small way. Then she added something unexpected. "And it might be nice for certain people to see what they missed, don't you think?" The suggestion hung in the air for a moment before I understood her meaning. A chance to show my family exactly what they had chosen to skip for their European vacation. When James and I returned to New York, Rebecca's photos were waiting in my email. They were breathtaking professional quality images capturing every magical moment of our special day. Me in my dress with the perfect lighting highlighting every detail. James and I exchanging vows with the ocean behind us. The two of us surrounded by our supportive guests at the reception. There were also several photos I hadn't been aware were taken. Me laughing with Rebecca as she adjusted my veil, James shaking hands with the minor celebrity who had attended. All of us together in a group shot that looked like a spread from a high-fashion magazine. After thinking carefully about Rebecca's suggestion, I decided to post a selection of these photos on Facebook where my family would certainly see them. But rather than frame it as a dig at their absence, I wrote a heartfelt caption expressing gratitude. "Our wedding day was more magical than we could have imagined," I wrote. "Sometimes life surprises you by bringing exactly the right people into your life at exactly the right moment. Endless gratitude to everyone who made the effort to be there. Especially our unexpected guardian angels who showed up with open hearts and helped create the most special day of our lives." I tagged everyone who had attended, including Rebecca and the other notable guests. I didn't mention my family's absence at all. There was no need to. The photos told the story eloquently enough: the stunning venue they had passed up, the celebration they had missed, and most importantly, the joy they had not managed to diminish. Within minutes of posting, my phone began buzzing with notifications. Friends commenting with heart emojis. Colleagues expressing surprise at the famous faces in the photos. And then, the text from Catherine. "Since when are you friends with Rebecca Johnson?" she demanded. "And why is that actor from that Netflix show at your wedding? Are these photos real?" I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. Finally, I listened to her message. "Audrey," she began, her voice artificially bright. "I just saw your wedding photos. Everything looked lovely, dear. You should have told us there would be celebrities attending. We might have reconsidered our travel plans." She paused. "Anyway, call me back. I'd love to hear all about it." There was no acknowledgement of what they had done. No apology for missing my wedding or stealing my money. Just the implication that had they known there would be famous people present, my wedding might have been worth attending after all. My father texted next, "You didn't tell us your wedding would be such a production. Seems like you were just showing off to make us feel bad about not being there." I marveled at their ability to twist the narrative, to make themselves the victims in a story where they were clearly the villains. But something had fundamentally changed in me. Their attempts at manipulation no longer worked. I felt no need to explain or defend myself. Their opinion of me no longer defined my worth. Instead of responding to any of them, I turned off my phone and took James out to dinner at our favorite restaurant. We toasted to our new life together and to the unexpected blessings that had come from what initially seemed like a devastating betrayal. The next morning, I received an email from Rebecca that would change the trajectory of my career. Her company was looking for a new marketing director, someone who understood both the business and creative sides of fashion. Would I be interested in interviewing for the position? I sat staring at the email in disbelief. The salary she mentioned was nearly double what I was currently making. The opportunity to work with a creative team at one of the most respected fashion houses in the industry was beyond anything I had imagined for myself. As I typed my enthusiastic response, I couldn't help but reflect on the strange path that had led me here. Had my parents actually shown up at my wedding, I never would have met Rebecca. Their betrayal had inadvertently opened a door I didn't even know existed. Perhaps the $20,000 hadn't been stolen after all. Perhaps it had been invested in an unexpected future, one where I was finally free from the need for approval I would never receive. When we returned from our honeymoon, our apartment was filled with wedding gifts and congratulatory cards. Amidst the pile of well wishes were 3 voicemails from my parents and 5 from Catherine, each progressively more demanding of a response. I listened to them all at once, like ripping off a Band-Aid. My mother's messages started with faux cheerfulness, asking about the wedding and the celebrities, but by the 3rd call, her true feelings emerged. "Honestly, Audrey, ignoring your mother is childish behavior," she scolded in her final message. "We raised you better than this. You have no idea how you've hurt us by flaunting these famous people at your wedding when you made us feel guilty about not attending. You know your father can't handle long flights with his back problems." There was no mention of the $20,000. No acknowledgement that they had chosen a European vacation over my wedding. In their revised version of reality, I was the villain for having a beautiful wedding without them. Catherine's messages followed a similar pattern, starting with curiosity about the celebrities and ending with accusation. "You obviously planned this whole thing to make us look bad," she said in her final voicemail. "You knew those people would be there when you invited us. You probably knew I'd have conflicts with the dates too. This was all a setup to play the victim, wasn't it?" James listened to the messages with me, his expression darkening with each twisted accusation. "They really can't take responsibility for anything, can they?" he said when the final message ended. "They've completely rewritten what happened." I nodded, surprisingly calm. The messages would have devastated me a month ago. But now they just confirmed what I'd finally accepted: my family was incapable of honest self-reflection or genuine remorse. Rather than engage with their alternate reality, I focused on building our new life together. I interviewed with Rebecca and was offered the position. We found a slightly larger apartment closer to my new office. We began establishing our own traditions: Sunday brunches, monthly dinner parties with friends, weekend hikes when the weather permitted. 2 months after the wedding, we received a large envelope in the mail from my Aunt Susan, my father's sister. Inside was a belated wedding card with a generous check and a handwritten note expressing regret for missing our special day. "I had no idea you were getting married in May," she wrote. "Your father told the family the wedding was postponed until next year because you were having relationship problems. I only discovered the truth when I saw your photos online. I'm so sorry, Audrey. This isn't right." Her note was like a key unlocking a door. If my parents had lied to Aunt Susan, who else had they lied to? I began reaching out to extended family members and discovered a pattern of deception. My parents had told everyone different stories about the wedding being postponed, canceled, or moved to an inconvenient date. They had effectively ensured that no one from my side of the family would contact me about attending. With this new information, I wrote to Aunt Susan and other relatives, briefly explaining what had actually happened without dwelling on the hurt. Many responded with shock and sympathy. Some shared their own stories of my parents' manipulative behavior over the years. Family dynamics I had never understood suddenly came into focus. 3 months after the wedding, my parents attempted a more direct approach. They showed up unannounced at our apartment on a Sunday morning. I peered through the peephole, my heart racing at the sight of them standing in our hallway. James came up behind me, placing a steadying hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to open it," he whispered. "We can pretend we're not home." But some small, stubborn part of me wanted them to face what they had done. I wanted to look them in the eye, not to seek approval or acceptance, but to show them I was no longer the daughter they could manipulate and discard. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. "Audrey," my mother exclaimed with forced brightness. "Surprise. We were in the city for a medical conference and thought we'd stop by to see you and James." She held out a small gift bag. "We brought you a little something from Europe." I stood firmly in the doorway. "Why are you here?" My directness visibly startled them. My father recovered first. "We're here to see our daughter," he said gruffly. "Is that a crime?" "It's interesting that I'm suddenly your daughter again," I replied calmly. "Last I heard, I wasn't worth seeing in a wedding dress." My mother's expression hardened. "Are you still harping on that?" It was one text message sent in frustration. "You know your father says things he doesn't mean when he's upset." "You stole $20,000 from me," I stated flatly. "You lied to our entire family about my wedding date. You chose a European vacation over being there on the most important day of my life. And now you're on my doorstep expecting what exactly?" My father's face flushed red. "We did not steal from you. That money was a gift to the family. If we'd known you'd attach so many strings to it." "A gift?" I interrupted, my voice rising despite my resolve to stay calm. "I specifically sent that money for you to book flights and accommodations to my wedding. There were no strings attached other than the expectation that you'd use it for its intended purpose." "Well, we're here now," my mother said, attempting to push past me into the apartment. "Let's not argue in the hallway where all your neighbors can hear." I didn't move. "You are not welcome in our home. Not today, not until you've acknowledged what you did and offered a genuine apology." For a moment, my mother's composure cracked. Tears filled her eyes, and for a second, I thought a breakthrough might be possible. Then she spoke. "After everything we've done for you," she said, her voice trembling. "After all the sacrifices we made, this is how you treat us? By humiliating us in front of your building? By flaunting your celebrity friends online to make us look bad?" And there it was again. The victim narrative. The manipulation. The complete inability to see their role in the estrangement. "I think you should leave," James said from behind me, his voice firm but not unkind. "Audrey has been clear about what she needs from you. When you're ready to have an honest conversation, you can call first and well consider meeting somewhere neutral." "You can't keep her from her family," my father blustered, puffing up his chest. "We're her parents. We're blood." James met his gaze steadily. "I'm not keeping her from anyone. Audrey is an adult making her own decisions about who she allows in her life. And from what I've seen, Blood hasn't counted for much in how you've treated her. My father's face darkened. You'll regret this attitude when it comes time to discuss inheritances. Family loyalty matters in the long run. I almost laughed at the transparency of the threat. I don't want your money, I said honestly. I never did. I wanted your love and support, but I finally accepted that's not something you're capable of giving me. I closed the door gently but firmly, then leaned against it. My heart pounding, but my mind surprisingly clear. James pulled me into a hug, and we stood there in silence for several minutes. You okay? He finally asked. I nodded against his chest. Actually, I am. For the first time in my life, I think I really am. The gift bag they had brought remained in the hallway. We donated its contents, a small Eiffel Tower statue and chocolates, to the children's hospital where James' cousin worked as a nurse. That encounter marked a turning point. With the help of a therapist I'd started seeing after the wedding, I began to recognize and dismantle the patterns of behavior I'd developed in response to my parents' emotional neglect. The constant need for approval. The tendency to blame myself when others treated me poorly. The belief that I had to earn love through achievement or sacrifice. As the holidays approached, I felt a new sense of freedom. For the first time, I wouldn't be navigating the familiar stress of trying to please my parents while being compared unfavorably to Catherine. Instead, James and I created our own traditions, splitting time between his family and gatherings with our close friends. My parents made one last attempt during the holiday season, sending an expensive gift with a card that read, "No matter what, we're still family. When you're ready to put this unpleasantness behind us, we'll welcome you back." There was still no acknowledgement of what they'd done, no apology, just the expectation that I'd eventually fall back in line and accept their treatment of me. I returned the gift with a simple note. I need respect, not presents. That was the last direct contact we'd have for many months. Through the family grapevine, I heard that Catherine had launched a social media campaign of sorts, posting throwback photos of us as children with captions about how fame and money had changed me, how I'd abandoned the family, how she'd always be there for me when I came to my senses. I muted her accounts too, choosing to focus on building the life and relationships that nourished rather than depleted me. 6 months after our wedding, James and I celebrated with a small dinner party in our new apartment. Around the table sat the people who had become our chosen family: Rachel and her boyfriend, Melissa and her wife, James' parents, his brother Michael, and a few close colleagues who had become friends, including 2 from my new position at Rebecca Johnson's company. As we raised our glasses in a toast to the past 6 months, I was struck by how much had changed since that devastating text message had arrived. The career opportunity with Rebecca had blossomed into a fulfilling leadership role that challenged and rewarded me daily. The connections we'd made through our unconventional wedding had developed into genuine friendships. And most importantly, the painful clarity about my family of origin had freed me to invest fully in relationships that were mutually respectful and loving. There were still difficult moments, of course. Birthdays and holidays carried a certain weight of absence. Occasional messages from extended family members brought news of my parents and sister, usually conveying some version of their continuing narrative about my ingratitude and abandonment. Each time, the ache would return briefly, but it no longer defined me or derailed my happiness. Therapy had been instrumental in this healing process. My therapist, Dr. Martinez, had helped me understand that my parents' behavior reflected their limitations, not my worth. We'd worked through exercises to recognize and challenge the critical inner voice I'd internalized from years of their disapproval. I'd learned to set boundaries without guilt and to validate my own experiences without seeking external confirmation. One particularly powerful session focused on a realization that had been slowly forming since the wedding. I think the $20,000 was worth it, I told Dr. Martinez one rainy Tuesday afternoon. As bizarre as that sounds. She tilted her head, encouraging me to continue. If I'd never sent that money, if they'd just declined my invitation normally, I might have spent years still trying to win their approval, still hoping that someday they'd see me and value me, I explained. But the way they took that money, The text saying I wasn't worth seeing in a wedding dress, it was so clearly cruel that I couldn't explain it away. I couldn't tell myself I was overreacting or being too sensitive. The clarity was worth the price, she suggested. I nodded. Exactly. $20,000 bought me freedom from a lifetime of emotional manipulation. And it brought me Rebecca, this job. All these new connections. In a strange way, it might be the best investment I've ever made. As autumn approached, bringing the holiday season with it, I received an unexpected letter from Aunt Susan. She was planning a trip to New York and wanted to know if we'd be willing to meet for dinner. Unlike my parents' ambush visit, her request was respectful of our boundaries, openly acknowledging the family situation and making it clear she understood if we declined. We met at a cozy Italian restaurant near Central Park. Susan, my father's younger sister, had always been the family rebel, marrying a man my grandparents disapproved of, moving to California, pursuing art rather than a practical career. Perhaps that's why she'd always shown me a bit more understanding than others in the family. Over pasta and wine, she shared her own complicated history with my parents. The competition between siblings that had never really healed. The subtle ways my father had undermined her choices over the years. The distance she'd had to create for her own well-being. I've watched how they've treated you since you were little, Audrey, she said, her eyes sad but clear. The favoritism was obvious to everyone, though most of us were too cowardly to say anything. I should have been a better aunt, a better advocate. I'm sorry for that. Her acknowledgement brought unexpected tears to my eyes. For so long, I wondered if I was imagining the disparity in how my parents treated Catherine and me. Having someone from within the family validate my experience was powerfully healing. We spent 3 hours at that dinner, laying the groundwork for a relationship that would exist independently of my parents' influence. Before we parted, Susan handed me a small package. These belong to your grandmother, she said. My mother. She wanted you to have them, but after she died, your father took control of distributing her things. I think it's time they found their rightful owner. Inside the box was a pair of delicate pearl earrings and a handwritten note in my grandmother's distinctive script for Audrey, who reminds me so much of myself. Follow your own path, dear one. I had never known my grandmother felt any particular connection to me. The discovery that she'd seen something of herself in me, that she'd intended these heirlooms for me specifically, added another piece to the puzzle of my family history and my place within it. As December arrived, James and I decorated our apartment for our first Christmas together as a married couple. We bought a small tree, hung lights in the windows, and planned a menu for the friends who would join us on Christmas Eve before we traveled to spend Christmas Day with his family. 2 days before Christmas, a package arrived from my parents. Inside was an expensive cashmere sweater and a holiday card signed by them and Catherine's family. The message was generic happy holidays from our family to yours with no personal note. It felt like a performative gesture, a way for them to tell themselves they had made an effort without actually addressing any of the real issues between us. I considered returning it as I had the previous gift, but after discussing it with James and Dr. Martinez, I decided on a different approach. I donated the sweater to a women's shelter and sent my parents a brief email. Thank you for the holiday gift. I've donated it to the Downtown Women's Center where it will keep someone warm this winter. I hope you're all well. Audrey. No accusations, no emotional appeals, just a simple acknowledgement and closure. It felt like the healthiest response, extending neither an olive branch nor a weapon. As the new year began, I found myself reflecting on the extraordinary journey of the past year. From the devastation of my parents' betrayal to the unexpected joy of our wedding. From the professional opportunity that had arisen from the ashes of disappointment to the deeper, more authentic relationship with James that had emerged through weathering this storm together. I sat down one evening and wrote a letter not to send, but for myself. A letter to the Audrey who had transferred $20,000 to her parents with such hope and trust. Dear Audrey, I wrote, I want you to know that the heartbreak you're about to experience will ultimately set you free. The people who should love you most will let you down in ways you cannot yet imagine. But in their absence, you'll discover strengths you never knew you possessed and connections you never dreamed possible. The $20,000 you're about to lose isn't just money, it's the price of your freedom from toxic patterns that have defined your life for too long. It's an investment in clarity and truth. In finally seeing your family for who they really are rather than who you need them to be. This will hurt more than anything has ever hurt before. You will cry on bathroom floors. You will question everything you thought you knew about love and family. You will wonder if you're worthy of being seen and valued. But I promise you this. On the other side of this pain is a life more authentic and joyful than the one you're living now. You will build a family of choice that celebrates rather than diminishes you. You will find professional fulfillment that no one can take away. And most importantly, you will finally understand that your worth has never been dependent on your parents' approval. So send that money, Audrey. It's the last sacrifice you'll make at the altar of their acceptance. And though you don't know it yet, it's actually buying your freedom. With love and understanding. Your future self. As our first anniversary approached, James and I began planning a trip to celebrate the milestone. Not to Hawaii, which held both beautiful and painful memories, but to Japan. A place neither of us had visited. A new adventure for our new life together. The day before our departure, I received a text from Catherine, a photo of her daughter Emma at her school play. With the caption, "Your niece asked why and Audrey never comes to see her. What should I tell her?" It was a classic manipulation tactic, using the children as emotional leverage. A year ago, it would have worked, sending me into a spiral of guilt and self-doubt. But now I could recognize it for what it was. I chose not to respond to the text directly. Instead, I ordered a set of books about Japan for Emma and her brother Jackson, having them delivered with a note, "Thinking of you as Uncle James and I explore Japan. Looking forward to sharing stories and photos when we return. Love, Aunt Audrey." It was a small gesture. A way of maintaining a connection with my niece and nephew without allowing Catherine to set the terms of our interaction. I couldn't control the narrative she was creating about me for her children, but I could still extend kindness directly to them. As James and I boarded our flight to Tokyo, I felt a sense of peace that had been hard-won through months of painful growth. The journey ahead promised new experiences, new challenges, and new memories. But unlike the anxious, approval-seeking woman who had once transferred $20,000 to try to buy her parents' love, I was traveling now as someone who understood her own worth. The money was gone. But what I'd gained in exchange was invaluable. The clarity to recognize manipulation, the courage to establish boundaries, and the wisdom to build a life filled with genuine love and respect. Sometimes the greatest betrayals lead to the most profound blessings. And sometimes, letting go of what you thought you wanted creates space for what you truly deserve. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision about toxic family members? Did you find it harder to maintain boundaries during holidays or special occasions? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's struggling with similar challenges. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of healing and growth. Thank you for listening, and remember, the family you choose can be even more powerful than the family you're born into.